Okay, Dan and Gail, I have a brand new segment. We've never done this before.
Ooh,
And I have not told you about it other to warn you that
no.
we'll see. So I'm calling this segment Two Therapists Walk into a dot 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 dot. Um, where I'm going to drop you into a normal social situation and then see what you can tell us about what's happening under the surface. So are you game?
Of course,
We are game.
always.
Okay, so here's the scenario. Imagine this. A mandatory HR training in a beige conference room with stale donuts and a slide deck from 2013. The topic, respectful communication in the workplace. Irony already thick enough to spread on toast. Employees file in, pretending not to dread the next 2 hours. The rule follower sits up front, taking meticulous notes. The checked out veteran slumps in the back, immune to corporate enthusiasm. Then we have the overcompensator who laughs too loudly at the facilitator's jokes, trying to look like the most compliant employee in the building. Meanwhile, the real problem employee scrolls on their phone, the exact behavior the session is supposed to address. There's always a devil's advocate who challenges every obvious ethical point, and the corporate gaslighter who declares we've never had communication issues while everyone else stares at the carpet. Everyone panics at the mention of small group activities. Adult humans revert to middle school coping strategies. It's chaos and business casual. So, what's actually happening in this room psychologically? Like, what? I don't know. I'm just curious to throw you guys in that room and what you see when you walk into that space.
So you're talking about each of these individuals and how they're reverting to their own defense mechanisms, shall we say, the place where they show up and they're the most comfortable by being the eager participator, the distancer, etc.
Well, I think like we are all adults in this
Yeah.
situation, right? And like I would like to hope that adults who have been in the business world know that like HR has to have these conversations at times and trainings are sometimes, important. And yet it feels like every time I've been in one of those spaces, virtually or otherwise, there's like there's so many different personalities and none of them seem to be able to like I don't know, grow up and be present for the thing. So I just was wondering,
Well,
like, why is that such a struggle for us?
okay, so full disclosure here, in those kinds of corporate training things, I'm the one scrolling through my phone in the back of the room because I find most of those corporate training things, I understand that they're required, but when I was last at the big company, and if HR is listening, well, okay. Like I absolutely, it's like, how do you fast forward through this training that's required of you quickly enough to get to the end of it so you can take the quiz and move on. Because I took this quiz every year and I took this training every year for the last 12 years, and it just I feel like I'm wasting my time. Now, maybe that's cynical. It is cynical. I would love for all trainings to be meaningful and for all corporations to sit back and say, what do my employees need? A company is telling me I have to take a CPR training. I worked at the time 100% from home. I have no one to do CPR on. I am not seeing any patients in person, and it's corporate policy. So rant over. I don't know if I'm even answering your question, Michael. But I have I will say, I will admit upfront to a very negative impression of most corporate required trainings.
I think you got at what I was thinking, which is essentially each of these personalities in some way, shape, or form is saying, this doesn't apply to me. This doesn't feel meaningful. Even the quote unquote person, the offender, who, has engaged in problematic communication in this hypothetical scenario, their leadership has not done a good enough job or communicated clearly enough, like, we have a problem with your communication. Instead, they have chosen and run around this and be more obtuse and more vague and pull everyone in. And so this person, I mean, is not so vain, doesn't understand that this song is about them. And sorry. So, I think that in this case, if we have one problematic individual, we owe that person a very clear sit down with management to say, this is exactly the concern we have. These are exactly the behaviors we need to see changed, or these are the benchmarks. Clarity in that communication is respectful and I think and meaningful. And if that person can't meet the benchmarks, then you need to be taking HR actions because what in the scenario as described, Michael, you have one individual who is problematic. And so this company is coming in and mandating a session, a 2-hour session, and I can't remember how many individuals, but even if we say that there are 4 individuals in the room, you now have 8 hours of corporate time being spent on something. So this is not a good use of corporate time and dollars, and it certainly isn't going to boost morale because it doesn't feel meaningful and relevant to the other individuals in the room. So I think this is the problem, right?
Yeah.
Now, as Dan said, if we can make that training meaningful, can we make it interesting, can we make it can we create an environment where our employees feel supported and empowered, then you have buy-in and people go, oh, that was really interesting, I learned something. Unfortunately, I don't think that is the status quo. I think more often we just need to check a box because we have some compliance or regulatory box we have to check, and so there we've done it.
And I've had trainings within a corporate setting that were phenomenal. I've had trainings that really like taught me something that I like, okay, this is but the same way that I take trainings as a psychologist, you and I are both required to do a certain amount of continuing education. All continuing education, all training should have at its core something meaningful, something important to convey. And they should be done in a way that is interesting and connects the employee. Because there's, just like teaching, you can teach a class in college or any other level that conveys all the information in a way that no one will understand it, or will care or will capture it, and you've checked the box of teaching it. Or you can teach it in a way that really captures people and really is meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to look at here.
So I'm wondering then, like thinking about how this applies to professional conferences, because you mentioned that, right? Like, I think every professional conference I've gone to has similar roles that people seem to play, right? Like, there's the one person who asks questions that are not questions, that are often just reiterations of what the person has said. And, like, I don't know, I was just struck by, I guess, like I don't know, the dynamics at play in that it's kind of a public space. It's kind of performance. Some people are there to learn, others feel mandated. So I don't know. I was just, I don't know if there's more to say about that.
I think you're right, though. If you have a room of 50 to 100 people attending a professional conference, your descriptions of those individuals, like, absolutely, we could pick those people out in the room and they exist in every room almost without fail. And I can admit to being probably in some of all of those roles, depending on the training, right? I can be the phone scroller and sit there and, pick away at a game on my phone. I have been the, upfront, this is really interesting, I'm engaged. I've been the challenger. I think it depends on the presenter. And again, if they are making me feel like they're bringing me along with their content and their material, or are they talking down to me? Are they trying to tell me something in a way that feels like I am sort of maybe being chastised or not valued in that room? So I think there are lots of reasons that those dynamics show up, and I think there's also just interpersonal ones. I might walk in that room feeling extremely defensive. And so I'm just armored up and ready for the battle because I am telling myself a story that I don't need this. And so, I think there's speaker dynamics and I think there's listener dynamics.
100%. That makes sense.
One of my very first professional conferences that I ever did was in graduate school. And I don't know if you remember this or not, Gail, but there was, we were a panel all talking about Don Quixote, women in Don Quixote. And we intentionally paired off with two people, pro-con, basically, in a situation. And I got to argue the pro part, and then my partner argued the con part. And there was this person I could see in the audience, like, that was just, like, uncomfortable in their seat and, like, radiating energy. And as soon as it got to Q&A, they jumped up and they're like, I think you're wrong. And they started like berating the person who was with me. And it was on some level fascinating that we moved this person to such agitation. But I also was like, this isn't how you behave in this situation. And I had never been at any of those professional conferences up to that point either. So, but
I only have a vague memory of it. Sorry. Apparently it was really impactful given that person's level of agitation.
Well, whether trainings or HR or professional conferences, I appreciate the additional insights and helping me unpack that scenario.